you know, when you can put a finger on the progress, you know that there's so much going on in the background that you're probably not even aware of. So in the cyber range, for instance, I had a lot of practicals, and it popped up some of my previous experience and helped me to connect some of the dots. So when I walked into interviews, there were questions that I used to be asked before, and I knew the answer, but I wasn't able to articulate them in the best way. Yeah, and even when they were related to stuff I really knew about or had experience on, I just found trouble articulating the whole thing. But with the experience in the cyber range, it just connected everything together. Each question kept giving me a new opportunity to show my skills, and I was just finding myself responding to every complex question with ease. I think I did 2 interviews. So I applied for 2 roles after I joined the range.
This interview is with a gentleman who goes by the name The Watcher. He moved from Nigeria to the UK, and he had to relearn a bunch of technical aspects of cybersecurity as well as kind of get used to the culture. And he talks about his struggles and everything and kind of what he did to build intuition around cybersecurity and how he overcome a lot of hurdles and ended up getting hired for a really decent job. He'd be a really good person to emulate, so check out the interview. Hey everybody, my name is Josh Madakor. I'm a cybersecurity YouTuber, and I'm here with The Watcher. He's a member of our cyber range. He went through, did a bunch of stuff, and got a cool job in cybersecurity doing vulnerability management, I think it was. And he agreed to come on and talk to us about that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Josh, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Did I get your job title right? Or I guess, like, what's your job title, I should ask?
All right, so currently I'm a cybersecurity specialist. That's for my most recent role. Yeah, and it's basically just everything cybersecurity, from vulnerability management and penetration testing to threat hunting and all that. Yeah, and a little bit of other stuff, threat intelligence and all that. Yeah, because it's a contract role, so it's what comes up that I get to deal with, and we'll talk more about that, and I'll really elaborate on that. But that's just
okay. Cool. Thanks for that. What were you doing? I don't actually know this. Before you got this job, were you in IT already, or like what was kind of your previous role?
Yeah, I had been in IT. I've been in IT I've actually been in cybersecurity for a long time. I've been in cybersecurity for over 10 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just that I haven't really gotten what I really wanted out of cybersecurity all these years. Well, first of all, I was in a foreign country. I was in Nigeria, and I was working from there. It's a different environment. Yeah, it's still professional, but different environment, different standards, and all that. Now, when I moved over here to the UK, I decided to, of course, continue and stick to my career goals and all. However, I noticed the industry here was kind of like, it was different for me. The experience here was kind of different. I just noticed that I was finding it difficult to break into the industry here. It took me a while, and I got some challenge here and there. First of all, the social circle was kind of different for me, and the culture was kind of different. Everything from the tech culture to the personal culture, as in the societal culture and all. So I had to relearn in a way. I know it might not be the same for everyone, but that was my personal experience, though. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's significant, and that's really something. The cultural difference will matters, right?
Absolutely, though. Yeah.
Did you find it? This is like on the same topic, but did you find it a bit like difficult to interview, or I guess what challenges did you kind of face from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah, so my biggest challenge was actually the interviews. So prior to my coming over, I felt I was pretty good at interviews. So like I said, maybe it's the cultural thing, and I kind of knew how to approach. I kind of knew how to approach interviews in a very positive way over there. But when I came here, I noticed that the expectations were kind of different. I had to relearn everything. I had to relearn everything. I found out that I wasn't really connecting, and of course, yeah, new environment. I still had it was still kind of nerve-wracking, and I needed to start earning real quick, so it still added to the pressure. And I struggled. I really struggled. Yeah, I struggled here, and get landing a permanent job was a problem for me. I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of. I had already started getting certified before I came over. I had already been certified for years, but that was I felt there was something missing, and that was where my whole, I would say, my new quest began when I came to the UK.
Gotcha. So, and did you find it harder to actually get interviews, or was it harder to pass interviews like after you got them?
Yeah, so getting interviews was actually was actually not a problem for me. I was getting the interviews.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't passing the interviews. I was going into
Gotcha.
interview looking not nervous per se. Initially, I was going in with confidence, but I wasn't nailing them, and I was having trouble. I was like, no, there's something wrong here. I'm not doing something right. So I unfortunately here this social circle was different. So even connecting with like minds in the same field, people who were interviewing for the same kind of role was was difficult. So I could interview for a different kind of job outside cybersecurity, and I could land that job. But interviewing for a cybersecurity role was kind of difficult, and I was kind of surprised. I was like, "This is what I do. Why am I having trouble fitting in here?" So I knew there was something missing. Yeah, like I said, the culture. So there was something really missing. So I needed to relearn, and I was looking for the platform for that.
Gotcha. Since you said it sounds like you didn't really have trouble getting interviews, I assume like people are going to be like curious, I guess, what's on your resume. And you don't have to go like super deep, but what do you have like in terms of like degree and certifications and that type of stuff?
Oh yeah, so I had a degree in a different field, outside computer science, but it's in sciences though, but it's outside computer science. And it's at the time I started the degree, I didn't know I was even going to go into computer science myself, but I had a flair for computer science from the end of my university days. Got into I think I started with web development, and I grew into cybersecurity from there, and that was how my journey continued. And I had different certifications from CompTIA, a couple of them that I no longer have. Like when I came to the UK, I didn't have a lot of them. Even some of the present certifications I have now got expired in the process because I was doing so many things at the same time. I was trying to earn money. I was trying to do so many things at the same time and keep my certifications. So there's some certifications that I couldn't retain, and that was quite unfortunate. But I tried to make sure I keep the basic ones, CompTIA, all the CompTIA certifications that I had. I had to make sure that I gained those ones. The ones I lost, I had to get them back by all means. So CompTIA really played a huge role for me. So if when people, I also had a lot of job interviews that I expected to get that I ended up not getting because apparently maybe they needed more certifications. But I didn't have trouble getting job interviews though because I was getting interviews quite often. Yeah, quite often. I can't say the frequency, but it was quite often. I was getting calls here. I was even getting calls from recruiters for jobs that I didn't apply for.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool for me. But CompTIA, I would say did a lot for me from Security Plus. I got Security Plus. I had Pen Test Plus, and you know that also comes with certifications as well. So when you combine them, yeah, they come with stackable certifications, and they really add a lot of flavor to the resume. So it kind of helps. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Do you use like a LinkedIn and like Indeed over there, or is there like a different job board the UK uses? You don't have to answer this, but it's just like came into my mind.
Oh, we use Total Jobs here, Total Jobs, CW Jobs,
Oh wow.
Indeed, the ones I was using. There's another one, I think eFinancial, something like that. Yeah,
Oh, it's like
eFinancial.
bunch of new sites for me.
Yeah, they're very UK. Yeah, or rather, they're very British. So
That's funny. So I'm curious, like it sounds like you have like a lot of experience in education and stuff already. I'm just like wondering why you joined the cyber range, because you seem really squared away already. So I guess why did you
Well,
decide to join?
well, I saw your videos. I think there was a time I was preparing for an interview. I had actually seen one of your videos before,
Mm.
much earlier, because when I had spent a little while here, I had seen your one of your videos earlier, and I wanted to I just okay, yeah, I think I saw that. Oh yeah, there was a paid course going on and all that, and I was like, do I need to do that now at this level? And I didn't. I just ignored it. Yeah. Then later, I was preparing for an interview and I saw your video and I was like, whoa, hold on. I watched the video and I saw I kind of saw something I was lacking from your video and I was like, oh, hold on, this
Oh,
guy's
really?
got something going on here. And I paid attention to your other video. I watched your other videos and I paid attention and I was like, no, I think there's something that you've got that I really need. So I got into the cyber range and I actually saw that, yeah, you can read, you can study, you can even have some experience, but it's often not as rich as when you have a platform like the cyber range that gives you the real, how am I going to say this? I don't know how I'm going to put this that's going to be really clear. But from my perspective, the cyber range gave me real life opportunity to practice a lot of stuff that were on my CV
Mm.
that I had tried doing before. Some of them I had experience in before, but not deep, not in depth. So
Gotcha.
the cyber range really gave me that room to really go into real world scenario and test my skills over and
Oh, nice.
over. Yeah, because that's what you get in cyber range. You get to do it over and over, and it's really great. That was what just gave me that edge in cyber range, and I felt like I had something that I had always known of in a better in a better, what will I say? I think in a better delivery. Yeah, it was being delivered more appropriately. So I think
Oh,
cyber.
nice. I'm glad to hear that coming from someone who's like already a security professional. So thank you. That's funny. Did you happen to participate in any of the actual breaches we had? Like, did you do any of those, like actual threat hunting or any of that?
Yeah, that was a thing, and thank you very much for that because you gave us the room to participate in some of your events, and that gave me that real life experience in real life practical experience. So in my previous roles, I didn't really get so much hands on that. Yeah, I got some management experience. Then the hands on that I had were mainly self-led, and yeah, I had some in the field, but as I had some at work, but not so much of that. What I really wanted was more hands-on. I wanted to refine those hands-on skills and all that, which I tried to do by coming into the cyber range. And when I got into cyber range, I was seeing one investigation after the other, and I was like, whoa, why didn't you just give me more? And I was jumping into them, and I was just doing the investigations, the threat hunting, and all that, and it was fine. It was really good. It really refined my skills for me, and I was really really glad to have that.
Oh, nice. I'm glad to hear that. That was my goal with it. I didn't expect to get like as many breaches as we do, but it actually worked out really well. And I'm thinking to like make
Yeah,
courses around the breaches, but yeah.
yeah. Well, it was great. We're really, I think, really important for us. Yeah, those of us who are in cyber range. The breaches really gave us this, what do you call it, experience getting real world. So you see, when you practice these things on your own,
Mhm.
it's a totally different experience. You don't get to, you don't get to simulate the real life challenges that come up, if you know what I mean. Yeah, because yeah, you practice on your own. Even when you go to hack the box and all that, you get a totally different scenario. You maybe I haven't done enough capture the flags, but I thought I did. So I put in a lot of effort in capture the flags. I try to do this and that, but in cyber range, I had the privilege of getting real experiences. As in, I felt like I was in a race. I was in a race with time to apply incident response in the appropriate, in a professional way, in a more professional way, if I would say, and that was what really made me feel excited about this whole thing. The incident response part was really rich, and it getting to do them over and over. And, you have a real environment that simulates a real world scenario, and you have a lot of devices, you have a lot of endpoints, so it's super rich. It has the traffic, and it gives you that. Sometimes you do queries and you get results of over 1,000, 5,000, and you're like, oh my goodness, how do I pass this information to manage it in a way that will be more productive rather than voluminous, and all that. So I got that in cyber range.
Oh, shoot. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And this kind of leads me back to the previous thing you were talking about having difficulty passing the interview. And I wanted to ask, it doesn't have to be like related to the cyber range, of course, but how did you like overcome that barrier of being able to pass interviews? Like what actually helped you in the end?
Well, I wouldn't have been able to put a finger on it, but from experience, what I can say I got from the cyber range was just practice. Now, I wasn't practicing, I didn't even really practice much of the interviews, because you did some trainings for interviews as well, but I really didn't get the time to practice all that. I was just focused on the range and dealing with the classes and trying to finish the course. So I I noticed that when I got into an interview after I had my experience in cyber range, there was a difference. So when you can put a finger on the progress, that there is so much going on in the background that you're probably not even aware of. So in the cyber range, for instance, I had a lot of practicals, and it popped up some of my previous experience and helped me to connect some of the dots. So when I walked into interviews, there were questions that I used to be asked before, and I knew the answer, but I wasn't able to articulate them in the best way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and even when they were related to stuff I really knew about or had experience on, I just found trouble articulating the whole thing. But with the experience in the cyber range, it just connected everything together, and each question kept giving me a new opportunity to show my skills, and I was just finding myself responding to every complex question with ease. I did I think I did 2 interviews. So I applied for 2 roles after I joined the range. Okay. And actually it was more than 2 that I got invited for an interview for. I got an interview for the 3rd one, but the role was closed for business reasons, as I didn't get to do the interview. But I did the initial interview. They had programmed me for the 2nd one, but I didn't do the 2nd one because the role got closed. But gotcha. For the other 2, one of them, I got into that interview with so much confidence, and the questions were really tough questions they asked me. I had like how many guys on the panel? I had about 4 guys in the panel, and they were all throwing questions left, right, center, and all that. And surprisingly, it was just a walk in the park for me. And I got into the next stage of the interview and the next stage, and at the final part of the interview, I noticed that the competition was pretty high, so I narrowly missed that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I narrowly missed that one. And that was for an engineering role. That was a cybersecurity engineering role. Then I now got the one that I did as the 2nd one. Yeah, that one came up almost immediately, and I walked into the interview with the same attitude and the same approach, and I nailed this one. So it was, I hope that answered your question. Sorry, I know that I just had to give you a little bit of what I really experienced. It was just more of the practices in the cyber range, the ability to get your hands dirty consistently just gave me that push, and there was so much knowledge I gathered that I wasn't even aware of, and I dealt with some questions. I dealt with some questions with so much ease. I remember a particular question I was asked, and they kind of were like, I'm trying to remember the question, but they wanted to know how I approached um, uh, maybe an attack and recovery, kind of. Yeah, an attack and recovery. So when I started explaining it, I now made reference to a previous experience, and when I had that experience, I had it with some other guys on my team that helped resolve the problem, but I couldn't really articulate it. I would rather I wouldn't have been able to articulate it properly if I didn't do the cyber range, because I didn't do everything myself. I had some higher knowledge or higher level knowledge of what was done because of my role at the time. And when I was in this interview, when the question was asked, as I brought in this example, they dug into that example. They asked more questions, and I found myself really giving technical details of how it was resolved, and that was because of my experience in cyber range. So I found
Oh,
myself
nice.
really breaking it down, and they were so impressed. They were so impressed because really, I was impressed.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm happy to hear this. For like people listening, what he's saying is like true for everything, not only like cyber range, but if you do like some complex task, like many times it becomes really easy for you to talk about in the future. It's just like really basic. So like I want to say good work on all the practice. I'm glad it paid off for you.
Thank you, Josh. It's really paid off. It's really paid off. Yeah.
That's really dope. Do you remember, you don't have to answer this exactly or at all, but do you remember how many jobs you applied to about?
A lot. So the
Oh,
thing is, I would say I'll be the best person to advise for a CV because my approach to applying for jobs was really well, I'm trying to look for the best word for that, but it was really about diligence and consistency. So I applied for so many roles, and like I said, I was getting interviews, but I was applying for so many roles. Now you could see a lot of roles that you felt that, or rather, let me use myself as an example. I saw a lot of roles that I felt I was experienced enough to handle. I saw a lot of roles that I felt I had my skills in the CV reflecting and all, but I didn't get invited for any of them, for a lot of them. So in a space of about 2 years, I got about 15 interviews.
oh wow, 15.
Yeah,
Dang.
I got about
Okay.
15 interviews. Yeah, and I was having the same problem in all of them. I was going through these interviews, going through the first stage, but there was something about going through the final stage. So these things sometimes build a mental barrier for us, and we don't know how to bypass this. It was now like a jinx that I had to break, and the fact that I felt I had a jinx made it even more difficult for me to break. So it was more of a psychological thing. I was going for these interviews. I knew what the roles were about. I knew that I would be able to handle the roles, but I didn't know how to convince the interviewers. I didn't know how to tell them what they wanted to hear. And I knew there was something missing. I talked to some recruiters who weren't recruiting me. I talked to some other recruiters, but they weren't in the tech sector. So they were asking me questions, and they felt I was okay, but they were telling me that there was something missing that they couldn't really put a finger on. And I knew I knew I needed some help. And I knew I needed help from someone within the field. Yeah, I had friends in the field as well who I had talked to, but those ones didn't, how will I say, it's one thing to know how to do a job, or it's one thing to be good in a role, but it's another thing to be able to be a mentor for others. And that was what I wasn't getting here. I wasn't getting that. I needed that. I needed someone within this environment who had gone through this process before and who could mentor others. I wasn't getting that, but I got that from Cyber Range. I would say we got that specifically from you, because
Oh, thanks.
you know how to guide people to jump the hurdles. You know the kind of hurdles, you know the expectations that people will run into that could be a barrier. So you kind of were able to help us navigate around these things. So when I joined the cyber range, like I said earlier, the there were so many things I learned that I probably didn't know I learned. But what I knew, what the strategy I came with was finish the lab, go back to it again, redo it, and all that. Then, of course, you have a habit of responding to all your messages, which is fantastic. Which I
Thank
really
you.
respect that. Yeah. So
I
it
appreciate it.
also helped because I asked questions and you responded, and they really helped. It really helped, and I went into my interviews feeling a lot better, feeling a lot more confident, and getting results actually. Yeah, and for the CVs, yeah. So for my CVs, for instance, I had different CVs for different roles I applied for. I always had to fix them to suit the roles. I focused on keywords and made sure that um they weren't removed by parcels. I used a particular software to test my CVs before applying. What was the name? Sorry, I'm not so good with names, but I'll try and check or so. Let me just see if I can find that here. Okay, yeah. So I used Jobalytics. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure maybe you know about it.
Jobalytics.
Yeah,
I'll make a note
yeah.
of
So
this.
so
Okay,
I used it
cool.
to try to parse my CVs to test to see if they matched with the rules, and the tool often helps to make you see what's missing and what's not missing. But of course, the tool is not perfect. It can make its own mistakes and all. So I also try to use a little bit of common sense when I look at the rules and I see, okay, this is what they need, this is what they need. I also try to figure out what to add. But yeah, on an average of 10 applications, 20 applications, I may get like one or two feedbacks, depending, like, hey, wow, so your application and all that. And of course, these processes are not magical. So getting a feedback or getting a response wasn't an automatic guarantee that we're going to get an interview, because there are so many other factors that used to come into place for me, like the kind of visa you have, the kind of clearance level you have, and all that and all that. So those are
Gotcha.
stuff I had to deal with. So I would say on an average, I got like one interview for about 100 applications, if I would say.
Okay, that's a good
Pretty
metric.
aggressive.
Yeah, that's pretty decent actually for the U.S. at least. I feel like so that's like pretty good. You give a lot of really good advice, and I want to ask like one final thing, and this doesn't have to be like related to the cyber range. It could be like mindset or anything, but for the people who are watching who want to get into cybersecurity, maybe they're not in even IT yet. What kind of advice would you give them to kind of speed up that process and help them out?
Yeah, so I'm privileged to have some friends who I've kind of guided into cybersecurity, but I'm not saying I guided them into getting jobs, but I just helped them to get into the phase that I found myself for a long time. Yeah, but what I know they did was just go through the materials, know know that it's something that they had to do, they had to dedicate their time for, and it's something that they had to be focused on. I always told them that, look, you're not gonna just come in and get a job today and start earning six figures like you hear or like you see on adverts and all that. You're gonna have to read. You're gonna have to take your time to learn the ropes, know the different kinds of jobs in cybersecurity. You know how you fit into them, know how to address your CVs and all that. So the few guys that I know have been able to go through with these, what they did, and similar to what I did, was just binge courses, go through resources, study, give it your all. A lot of people have different. A lot of people come from different job backgrounds, and they don't always have the luxury of getting similar the same kind of approach, but people, everyone, no matter what you do, you have to just create that time, say 2-3 hours a day to go through your resources. If you're preparing for an exam, you have to dedicate like 2 months, 3 months of preparation every day, 3 hours, 2 hours, depending on the exam you're writing. But on average, you have to give in at least three hours. I'm not a very fast reader, so I I spent more than 3 hours a day. I spent up to 5 hours a day. There
Wow.
were days that or there were nights that I didn't sleep at all. I sacrificed my sleep. I'm not even
Oh.
advising everyone to do that because it's not really healthy. But I
Mm-hmm.
did that. So there were nights that I sacrificed my sleep. I tried to stay awake. I tried to go through materials. And when I go through materials, when I go through a course, for instance, I don't just go through the course once. I go through the course the first time, go through it the second time. I try to through it at least 3 times. And when I go through it, those 3 times, I make sure that one of them I do what it calls skimming. I just rush through
Okay.
it without really going into the details. I just rush through it and make sure I cover everything. So a lot goes into the subconscious in the study. Then I
Mm-hmm.
go back to the course again and do it in detail this time. And I try to go back through it for the third time. Then when I start doing previous questions and answers, I make sure that I go through the ones that I feel like I have a lot of weaknesses in. I go through them over and over again until I produce good results in those topics and all that. So I just apply that approach. And one more thing, it's easy to do a kind of a form of training for a very long time and get good at it. And after a while, you forget everything you learned because you didn't go back to that material again. So it's very important that after you've gone through your resources, you've done your training, you've probably written the exams,
Mm-hmm.
you try to keep doing stuff related to it so that you don't forget. It's easy to forget, and you reiterated that in your training in your course because you said do this 12 times, do it till it's boring, get bored
Yeah.
doing it, get bored. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is really good advice. This guy is speaking my language, and I just joined. I just joined quickly because you said this over and over. Go through the courses, go through the material, go through the resource over and over and over and over and over until it gets boring. And that's the approach I give to every form of preparation. And of course, that was the approach I gave. Well, to be honest, I didn't spend much time in the lab before I got my job.
Okay.
Things I just got into the lab. I thought I was gonna have to do this like 5-6 times, and I just went through the course once, and I was fortunate. So I would say diligence, consistency, and perseverance. I think those are the key things.
Yeah, 100% agree with those, and focus too. Like if you
Yeah,
can,
focus.
like, a lot of people like doing like a lot of stuff, but if you can like trim some of those things and then put extra time into what you're doing, like you said, you even lose sleep over it. You will get results like eventually. I 100% am on board with everything you said.
Yeah, I can add on that what you just said. Yeah, so there was a time I got a lot of pressure from, yeah, friends and loved ones who try to advise me to, hey, why don't you try this thing? There's money here, and it's not as difficult as this and that. And yeah, because at the time I was trying to get other sources of income, I found myself going into other paths outside cybersecurity, and I wrote some other exams outside cybersecurity, and I'll be very honest with you, those were my most difficult times because I I I ended up expending more energy and achieving nothing. So, like you said,
Mm.
focusing on something is really key. If you're here and here and here, you'll be a master of none, actually.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, this is really good interview. I think it will help a lot of people, especially I imagine like the UK audience and like anyone like moving countries. and listening to your struggle. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about all that. So like, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Thank you for the range once again. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.